So with all that's going on, we thought it might be nice to have an opportunity to talk about what's been going on at your libraries. I call this the pandemic vent, I'll be honest. We borrowed a number of questions from the Federal Depository Library community. They've had a couple of sessions on this. So we have these questions just to kind of get you started talking, and you can speak, you can unmute yourself in the, using GoToMeeting, or you can put a question in the chat. We will keep track of who volunteered what. If you're the kind of person who likes to raise your hand, you can type the word hand in the chat, and we will note that and call on you to speak. I'm just going to put up the first question. And these can be about GovDocs or just your library in general. But the first question is, I can't see the full question on my screen because I have all these controls up. What situations related to this moment have caused the most fatigue and potential for burnout in your libraries? And what are some of the ways these have been addressed?
Hi, this is Robin, or I'm Robin. I work at UW Eau Claire. So I'll just start us out by saying, I think that one of the most fatiguing and difficult things about operating a library in a pandemic is what we're doing right now, the virtual meetings. And I've heard from a lot of other colleagues that even though it's great that we can interact this way and be distant from offices, there is something really, really valuable about being able to be like in a workplace and interact together. And so the distance for my workplace has created a lot of kind of just I think a lot of just tired feelings because of the more formal way we have to interact, because we have these like scheduled virtual meetings, and we're communicating a lot more in writing about tiny things that we might have otherwise just talked about in the hallway or on a reference shift or something like that. And so layered on top of all of the unknowns and the complexity of this moment, and just considerations about safety and things like that, just like the day in and day out of interpersonal communication has gotten pretty tough.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, those are great points. And Abby Swanton from the reference and resources for lifelong learning, I think is where she's at. There being no barriers for finding meeting space and other logistics of physically coming together has created more meetings in my life than I've ever had. Yes. Yeah. And Robin Miller agrees.
John Berg from Platteville. I'm going to say one of the things that kind of fatigues me is the inactivity that I experience. Right now, we're, our students are on campus, at least in Platteville, till Thanksgiving, and then we go 100% virtual. But even now, in normal times, I think we are about 85% virtual or online. So the student population in the library and utilizing our services in the library is minimal. And so I think for me the fatigue is the inactivity. Now, granted, we have meetings, just like a previous librarian said, a lot of Zooming and things like that. But I miss the day-to-day interaction, just talking with students, just a quick reference question here and there, pointing out a tool, something like that. So the inactivity and basically the lack of two patrons utilizing the libraries right now kind of fatigues me. That's it.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
So this is Eileen. This is Eileen from the Historical Society, and I just wanted to chime in with what I agree with what John said, and then beyond that, I found that working from home is a much more sedentary activity than my office job was before, and I thought that my job was pretty sedentary before, and I never realized how much, I got up and walked around the building or went up to the stacks or whatever, and I do find that physically exhausting, just being sitting in one place all the time, and I have to, force myself to get up and walk around and stuff like that. So that's one thing I've struggled with.
So this is Abby. I would say also, I agree with John. So part of the serendipity that kind of happens by being in an office with other people, and things just kind of happen in a way that don't happen when you're working remotely. And I think I have a lot of anxiety about just all of the big projects that are kind of on hold right now, just because they simply can't be done remotely. And when they're going to kind of rear their ugly head and kind of come all like crashing down all at once when we get back to the office, and how am I ever going to get caught up kind of mentality. But I kind of spend most of my days kind of breaking things down into trying to be more realistic, giving myself a break, and understanding I just have to break my day into smaller chunks and not get ahead of myself as well. So being very conscientious of just not letting myself become overwhelmed.
Yeah. Thank you both, Eileen and Ann.
This is Sean King. I just had a quick comment too. Coming from more of the technical services side of the library, I think there was a lot of struggle with, could we accomplish our work from a distance, first and foremost, and then the other thing was trying to wade through all the differing information about how long to quarantine materials, how to be careful, with processing materials, going from acquisitions to cataloging to circulation, all of those different realm studies as they came out, trying to digest all the varying information that came to us and trying to determine what was going to work best for us to keep people safe. That was very, very fatiguing, as you say.
Yeah, I can imagine. Anyone else have that same kind of just figuring out how do you deal with materials? I know it's been a big question for our patrons, just figuring out how to return materials, how long they sit in quarantine.
Hi, this is Rosemary from Marquette University Law Library. From also a technical aspect of our materials going in other people's hands, all the students, I guess, we had to come up with policies. How long to quarantine our materials, how long wiping down laptops, wiping down chargers. So we kind of got it routine now, but in the beginning it was a struggle trying to figure out how we're doing this again. And I was furloughed until from April to July. So I came in right after these policies were made. So for me, it was a catch-up type of period. But we're not allowing the public to come into the law library right now. So we get reference calls. we basically transfer them to reference librarians who are working at home remotely. But that's how we've handled the situation thus far.
Thanks, Rosemary.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to talk about things that have caused fatigue and burnout? I'll call on myself to say mostly I've been working in public services. We are open by appointment in my building, and I oversee work with a lot of the student workers in our unit. We have more student workers than we've ever had because we have more checkpoints that our patrons have to go through. And things change all the time. And we are creating materials, we're creating documentation to explain how things work in our library. We have people from other units and other libraries on campus working in our building, in our department, which is great. But there are a lot of things they don't know. We realize they don't even know where the closest bathroom is, or we give them information on, here's how you make the PA announcement at the end of the day to announce the library's closing, and they say, where's the panel that you refer to that has the PA system? So we're writing instructions for all of that, a group of us are, and then things can change. We just got some clarification in our food and drink policy, and we had just sent out language to our student workers to say, here's what you should say about food and drink. And now we have to change it one day later. And so the constant changes, I don't handle change all that well, and this is an evolving situation, and so those wear me out. And I think with that, I'll move on to the next question, but if you think of other things, you can jump in. What concerns do you have about the long-term impacts these disruptions may have on the communities we serve and their use of our spaces, collections, and services? How will library advocacy change because of the shifts we have experienced in our libraries?
Well, I can just say that from my vantage point, one of the things that Eileen from Historica and Pat from the LRB and I have discussed is that as easy as it would be, maybe not so easy, but as tempting as it would be to just say, well, we're just not going to distribute print anymore and collect print anymore. We don't want to make big programmatic decisions in the midst of a global pandemic. You know, we still want to be strategic and thoughtful as far as what impact that would have on their very historical collections that they maintain, and really not give in to what's relatively hopefully going to be a short-term blip that could have long-term impact on their ability to provide access to things they would want in print.
Thank you, Abby. That's a good point.
This is Carrie Zelenka from the State Law Library. And one thing that I've been wondering, we are not open to the public right now, but we're doing lots of sidewalk pickups and reference, and it's kind of a more intensive level of service for the librarian since we aren't letting people come in to do their own research unless they can get to it remotely. And I'm wondering if our patrons will get used to that level of service and maybe come to expect it. And, you know, even after they can come into the building, maybe they would prefer not to, and then ask us to continue this higher level of service than if they were able to come in themselves. I'm not sure. This is just something that I've been wondering.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I can identify with that in that people, have to come into our building to pick things up, but we check out the materials for them. We retrieve them from the shelves. And, you know, once patrons can get over the barrier of requesting the books, getting an appointment and getting an appointment, they just have to come into our lobby, grab the books and go. And I think a lot of them don't realize all the back end work that it takes on our end to retrieve those books and get them checked out to the patron and get them organized and ready for their appointments. And we can do it now because it's our only option, and because there are other things we're not doing. But I don't know if we could keep that up.
Right. And I think sometimes people don't know if we have a book or a piece of information in our collection. So then we start that process of seeing what's in the collection for them. And each interaction takes a lot longer than it would if they, you know, were able to come in and browse the shelves. I think people are happy with the level of service. But yeah, it's sustainable. I see Abby saying the same thing.
Yeah. I think one of the concerns I have too is that we are pushing people so much to do things online, whether it's requesting books or having reference questions. And so we're not even hearing from people on the other side of the digital divide too much. The only way we hear about them is if they come into the building, which they're discouraged from doing. So I do wonder if, you know, I don't want us to forget that there is that digital divide, and we still want to serve those patrons. We haven't come up with a good way to do it right now during this pandemic, but I don't want those patrons to just drop off the radar permanently. Kind of related to Abby's point about print materials are useful, and for some people they are the better option. Just because they're harder to access now does not mean they still don't have their usefulness. On the other side, I feel like there has been kind of a recognition of all the important services libraries do provide. And on our campus, providing study space, and our provost really wants us to provide that option as much as possible. And on the weekends, we have about 120 seats available in our building, and they're filled up. So we still have people who want to come into the building even to study. And then for public libraries, I know they're providing computer access for the public. And sometimes they're the place, you know, you can go to their parking lots for Wi-Fi. I'm going to read out Catherine Loomis says in the chat, I think libraries are going to have to change the way we do things, just like restaurants, etc. People don't like the pandemic, but people do like curbside pickup at restaurants, libraries, etc. I think we're going to have to relook at what we do and what our patrons want. I think people have missed going into libraries, and this provides us opportunities to look at new programs and services, etc. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. And I'm not sure who this person is, but they said every service that gets added back to libraries is so appreciated. That is true. We have even had to figure out how patrons can look at microfilm and microfiche. it's, you know, for as much as we all roll our eyes at it, we still have some users who really, really want to access the materials that are only on film. It's not a large number, but people were really appreciative when we brought that back. I'm going to move on to the next question, but again, if people are struck by any kind of comment, feel free to make it. Carol Hassler says, for us, drafting files on Fiche are necessary, and we're definitely spending more time there. Yes, I can imagine. The next question is, what new challenges have you experienced in your libraries with this new environment, and how are you responding to these new challenges?
One of the challenges I've had again at Platteville, and it's kind of an unpleasant one that I don't like to do, but our chancellor has mandated pretty severe enforcement of wearing masks for staff and patrons. And I'm not a very confrontational person. And one of the things I hate the most is having to go up to the few patrons that we do have then in the library and bother them, I guess is the easiest word to use, and say, you know, put on your mask. And one of our librarians over the weekend was kind of even confronted with a couple of students who refused. And of course, we have a protocol for that as well. I think that's in this new world and the new environment that we have right now. You know, I kind of see myself, and I think all librarians do, more as a serving or a helping agent, you know, in our institutions. And now all of a sudden kind of having to do a policing component of our position or our job. I really don't like that. I mean, in the evenings, you know, I'd ask them to be quiet and things like that. But this mask thing, as we all know, has gotten also political. And I think that's what happened with my colleague over the weekend. You know, it was like a political issue with a patron, and which it's not. But I think that's one of the challenges I feel, at least at the moment. I don't like enforcing masks, regardless of how important it is. Thank you.
Yeah, John, I feel you. This is Beth again. Yeah, that part of the job for me, it's not what I signed up to do as a librarian. was go around and find people who are violating policy, and it is a really tough one to enforce. Sean said on this point, Sean King at Law Library said in the chat, it is interesting to see that some people have differing comfort levels with safety issues. And that's true too. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else on that topic of these new safety measures and enforcing them. Sometimes it's a matter of reminding my colleagues that we shouldn't be standing so close to each other. The masks, it's fine. It's the standing close to each other. And I sometimes do it too, reminding myself I have to keep 6 feet away.
I'll just add that thanks to DPI, I think, my library was able to participate in or attend a training called The Librarian's Guide to Homelessness. It was a training from Niche Academy that, from what I understand, DPI pays for it for the library community. Abby might be able to tell us more. But my point is that they had a very informative session in August specifically about confrontation in libraries. And I work with a group of people who are very non-confrontational too. And those of us who attended the training and have used the resources, the trainer had a script and like described lots of different scenarios and conversations. The guidance that we received from that training was invaluable to us and has really helped us to not only sort of bolster our courage with confronting people, because we definitely have had to deal with that with masks and standing too close together and other social distancing issues, but we have also found that having sort of standard language that we use and sort of even like role playing the different scenarios has helped us develop a sort of a practice for how to confront someone without feeling like we're having a fight. So I highly recommend seeking out a training like that because it was revelatory for a lot of my colleagues.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks for the recommendation. I know, well, if anyone finds links to information about those trainings, please put them in the chat. I want to keep going a little bit on the safety and enforcing policies issue. And then I'll come around to Sarah and Pat's comments. Corinne says in chat, I don't like it either, but it's to protect everyone. I've had to deal with confrontations between patrons and myself. So yes, I think keeping that in mind, we are protecting people. Then Michael Current said, he's at UW La Crosse, says, we put table tents about masks on most tables throughout the library. That seemed to help. But also our policy is it's okay to have your mask down while eating, drinking. So a few students learn to keep their water bottle nearby to justify their mask behavior. Yes. And I have to say, I am impressed and exasperated by the ingenuity of students in figuring out the ways to slip around the new policies we have in place. I am not a parent, so I haven't had to deal with this in my own household, but I've gained a little taste, I think, of what parents find out about or deal with all the time. Oops, sorry.
Hi, this is Yan Liao from UW Stevens Point. I think what I'm going to say is probably nothing new. It's not a new challenge, but it probably is getting worse because we have fewer patrons in the building. I'm going to
go back to Sarah Winger's comment. One challenge on the campus. I'm sorry, Yan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Oh, I was just saying this is nothing new to libraries, but having fewer people in the library probably is making this worse. In the past couple of weeks, our library actually had two men, one following our students around. The other one was like sitting across from the carol and saying, obscene words to our student, which is horrific. It's again, I feel like it's just because we have so few people in the building, this problem has gotten worse.
That's a really interesting point. But yeah, I just feel like with everything else we have to deal with, do we really need patrons harassing each other? And yeah, I think maybe, I don't know. It could be when you have fewer people around, there are fewer witnesses. I don't know. I do want to go back and see if anyone else is having issues getting coverage for your hours that you're open.
We're in Platteville, a relatively small academic library. Right now we have a director and 5 librarians, and it's worked out for the professional staff pretty well. I'm in charge of creating the schedules, and what happened, everybody was in agreement with this, is that a librarian a day. So one of my colleagues takes Monday, I'm usually on Tuesdays, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a different colleague. And basically we're kind of in charge of all reference public services at per day. And so we've been able to line up that way, through the whole semester, which has really worked for us well, which also allows then my colleagues then to work from home the day that they're not on call. So essentially, I mean, it doesn't work out this way that well, or always, but my colleague who works on Mondays essentially can work from home then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then their job at home then is to kind of monitor our chat, our emails, anything that can be done remotely. They then support from home, while the in-person librarian for the day basically takes care of all the walk-ins and the mask enforcement and things of that nature. So that's worked out really well. And then our support staff has also been very flexible, both technical services and public services. We can allow our people to work from home if they need to or want to, out of any particular fear that they might have or so of the virus, or being surrounded with somebody who had the virus. I mean, several of my people are parents, and the children in school get in contact and then they're notified, and so through tracing, it's affected my staff quite a bit. But anyhow, we've been pretty creative with staffing, and our student staff, on the other hand, has also been very supportive. The ones that we haven't want more hours, so they've been very accommodating as well. Our next challenge, and we're not sure how it's going to look, is after Thanksgiving we're going all virtual, the entire campus. That students instruction is going to go virtual, and that's going to be our next step, and I'm not sure how that's going to all flesh out yet. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I know at UW-Madison, not counting Historical Society, there are 3 libraries on campus that are open pretty much 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then till 5 on Friday, and 1 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. And of those 3 libraries, one of them has never been able to get enough student staff to staff in the evenings. So although the idea was that they would be open from 6 to 10 Monday through Thursday, they just haven't been able to open. They're on the western side of campus. This is Steenbach Library. They're near a lot of our one big cluster of our dorms. So, they do get, in the past, they've gotten people studying there. So the idea was we'd have libraries in some different geographical parts of the campus to be open, but we haven't been able to do that. I can say at Memorial Library, we've doubled our student staff in public services from 30 to 60, and even then we still have problems, and part of it is students who get exposed to COVID and have to quarantine. So we've had to come up with this elaborate way to report absences, because also our HR department is asking us to report how many students are absent and whether they're absent due to COVID or not. We've not only had students being exposed to COVID, some have had to take care of family members who have COVID, or they have to, in lieu of, I mean, our students are taking care of their younger siblings because their parents can't. So yeah, it's been a challenge. And as John hinted, we were trying to figure out what happens after Thanksgiving when all classes go online. And about 50% of our students initially said, no, we don't want to work in person, and I don't blame them. And now it's looking like closer to maybe 30 or 40% of our student staff won't be able to, they're the only ones able to do this. And I do want to hear it from Sarah. So let me see. Yeah, I have not heard you, Sarah. But you appear to be unmuted. And I see you're trying to get a mic. Oh, Sarah, we want to hear from you. Literally, we want to hear. Keep trying. Try refreshing your browser too, or refreshing GoToMeeting if you can. Or even step out and step back in, close down, and then re-enter. I'm gonna take up Pat Reichert's comment in chat that only 15 people are allowed to work in the Bureau at one time. Finding new ways to communicate with coworkers. We're using new programs to communicate besides email.
You hear me?
I can hear someone.
Oh, that's me.
That's
Hope.
Pat?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I wasn't sure the mic on these headphones worked. Yeah, our building has been closed since early on, so no one's been able to get into the LRB, and which also means that like drafting attorneys can't collaborate. So they've had to get kind of creative with how to work with each other. And so it's been interesting, but I wanted to say there was one positive thing out of this pandemic and working from home. I've been able to resume, well, actually it was not my job before. I'm taken on the chore of maintaining the LRB's digital collections. And I don't think I could have done that if I was in the office. So being able to work remotely from home, I've gotten a lot more done than I would have if I was in the office this entire summer.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah Winger. I am actually the senior academic librarian for the branch campuses for UW-Platteville. So I deal with both libraries at Richland Center and Baraboo. Baraboo is a different situation than Richland. I've actually had, well, at both campuses, I've had students test positive. I've tested positive. We've had all kinds of fun. However, once Thanksgiving starts, after Thanksgiving, Richland Center will have no student workers. I'm down to 1 student worker currently right now who works 8 hours a week. So we've had a lot of challenges just trying to keep things open. I only have 1 assistant on each campus, and currently one of them is out on FMLA taking care of her family. So I have not been able to attend anything at the other branch because I've been covering Richland. Luckily, I'm, off the COVID quarantine, but it's been a struggle just trying to keep things open there and still have some level of continuity on the campus. The Richland Library used to be very busy and now it's just not. And so it's been really hard trying to find coverage and keep the doors open and feel like we're still helping our community and not kind of making the students have less when they're already getting so much less as it is in their college experience. So that's where I'm sitting at. I'm just like, trying to keep the doors open and keep everybody happy. I do work from home. Like normally I work from home 2 days a week and then I alternate between the 2 campuses. I had been completely at home from March until, I don't want to say September, because I'm also in a risk category for health reasons. So it's just been kind of a struggle to make sure that my students have what they need, but yet work-study students have the availability to work, but with so little students on the campus because of virtual learning, it's been very hard to have coverage, and I'm just not sure what to do.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I appreciate you sharing that. I feel for you. I wish there was something we could do.
I'm just wondering if am I the only, we have, because of their branch campuses, they're smaller, so I'm just not sure if there's other branch campus librarians here. I don't know if main libraries who do have branch campuses have been hearing the same thing, or if they're just hopeful that things are going good. I'm just not really sure.
Yeah, if there's anyone who.
Well, I'll just share that UW Eau Claire only has 1 branch campus, Barron County, but we were just having a meeting this morning about staffing after Thanksgiving, and I know that that campus is also having a very similar staffing issue, although let me just say that your situation sounds really difficult, and I am so sorry, because that sounds incredibly stressful, even though it's very clear that you are doing your absolute best.
Well, I'm trying. My new title started September 1st. So, yeah. Hi, John, by the way.
Well, oh my gosh.
I want to say Sarah's doing a good job. She's connected to us here in Platteville. If we could send some students your way, we would, but they don't want to leave campus.
And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to.
But no, Sarah's got a rough job. I certainly acknowledge that, being, I don't want to say new in her position where she's in charge of 2 libraries, 2 branch campus libraries, with virtually very little staff. Yeah, it's rough. And Sarah helps us out, like I was saying, our backups on the reference desk and chat and things like that. So Sarah, thanks for that extra work that you do for Platteville.
Trying.
You're doing fine.
Yeah, I hope that the folks at Baraboo and Richland Center realize all that you're doing for those campuses.
They do, and if UW Eau Claire would like to have the Barron librarian reach out to me, I would be glad to talk with them just to, we're kind of in the same pond in a way. So it would be nice to talk with another branch librarian as well. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And Robin says she will connect you with the Barron County librarian. So that I'm glad any support we can give is great. So thank you for sharing again. I'm going to move on to the next question. How are you handling the backlog of materials in terms of staffing and procedures? Has this process gone smoothly, or are there things you would do differently?
This is Sean King. I can talk about in general. I think we started getting our selective separates shipped to us earlier on, like the middle of August, and it took a while for them to start coming in. But we were able to have staff in place to receive those at that time. And I think because of the way that their FDLP GPO is shipping things, it's been kind of haphazard. So we also have a student worker in GovDocs that's helping out with that. So we've been able to process materials and get them out onto the shelves. In terms of regular cataloging workflows, we were able to have somebody in the library all throughout receiving shipments as they came. After we restarted, we kind of put a stop on receiving books for a while, but then we decided that that was going to be a hassle with the backlog. So we started receiving things right away, and we were able to kind of keep things flowing by having things dropped off at people's homes to work on, and going in once. I was going in once every 2 weeks to help put labels on materials. So that's how we've handled things.
Thank you, Sean. This is one where I can't talk much because I don't do the processing.
This is Abby. So one of the things that kind of came up was every other year, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau publishes about 100 different informational papers as part of a series that they do. And I started to think about, what that would mean for our depository libraries to receive all of a sudden over 100 different reports to process into their print collections. And I decided to do a survey of the regional depositories that they would have gone to find out, directly from the field if this was something that they were still interested in receiving in print, or if they wanted to just, migrate the publication to electronic access only. And, it was a resounding, yes, please just provide it electronically. And I think from my vantage point, I'm trying to be very cognizant of the fact that there are staffing issues and backlogs, throughout the depository library community that I don't want to create hardship. So that's one of the things that I'm keeping in mind. Of course, the print will go into the Wisconsin Historical Society and the Legislative Reference Bureau print collections, which is great. But I'm very interested to hear about additional titles, perhaps, that especially the regionals don't want to receive in print anymore, and we'll be doing some additional surveying just so that we don't overburden depositories with things they may not want in print anymore, and that they can continue to be successful advocates for the depository program in other ways.
Thank you, Abby. And Yan at Stevens Point says in chat that UW Stevens Point has suspended purchasing print materials since April, with a few exceptions. And we have a copy cataloger in the office 2 days a week. So we don't have much backlog at this point, luckily. I've actually been able to work on some projects that have been on the back burners before. I do know that our technical services staff for the first few months were doing a lot of cleanup projects. So that's one of those small blessings. So thank you, Yan. And it does sound like what I've heard from GPO is that even though shipments have restarted, they have been slow, which in normal times isn't ideal, but at this point, I hope that our depository is a little bit of a breather. And Carol at the State Law Library says, we've been catching up in batches, one or a few vendors at a time, and working in 2 teams alternating in the library. I like hearing that.
Well, and also just in terms of UW Systems, Alma Law Library catalog for the UW system, I know all the GPO electronic records have been loaded every month. So electronic records are up to date, which is a bonus.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that is nice. And Carrie Zelinka, as far as tackling projects in the back burner, Carol did a ton of work on our website. So that's great. And we heard about the work Pat Reichert has been able to do at the Legislative Reference Bureau. And maybe that carries well into the last question. What positive outcomes have you seen in your library?
Beth, this is Nancy. I can start that out. I was around until July.
Yes.
And because of the pandemic, and I was in the office a couple days a week, talk about projects that needed completing, all of the discards that I had requested from libraries for the last 2 or 3 years, it was 50 linear feet at least of all different sizes. I got them all done because I wasn't getting shipments from GPO and other things weren't coming in. That got caught up before the total shutdown, and I finally was able to finish a project I started in like 2005 and kept touching back and forth, and that was completing a census review of all the African Americans in Dane County and Madison from 1850 through 1940 by name, occupation, that type of thing. I would never have gotten that done without the pandemic having closed us up and restricted what we could do. So that was a positive outcome.
Yay. Yeah. That's great. And I see Sean King said documentation is getting updated for library procedures. Yay. Kim Westerberry says, we've been able to update our LibGuides, which has been a back burner project. Yep, I know about that. And Yan at Stevens Point says, our staff and student workers are wonderful. Nothing new, but a fact we appreciate even more now. Yes, that is I feel the same. One thing that with all these new students we've been hiring, I'm lucky enough that we have a team of 4 people who oversee our student workers. And the only way we could figure out how to train them was to create online modules. This had been the project of one of our supervisors. She had started doing it in the spring. She and one of our other student workers really went to town, and so our students would complete online modules in Canvas, which is the UW-Madison's online learning platform. And so when they stepped into the library, they were way more trained than we'd ever had students trained before. Like, they could go to work right away, and a lot of them would say, you know, they might they wonder, wait, how do I handle this? And like, oh wait, I saw that in a module, let me look it up. So we're going to keep those modules. We're going to keep doing that. And Margaret Booth from Law Library says, at UW Law Library, we've gotten 17 depository shipment boxes so far and have processed all of them. We seem to be missing only one box from early May, but we just received one from May about a week ago, so I trust the missing box will be arriving soon. Yeah, it's kind of funny the orders things come in, but I'm impressed you've got them all processed. And Carrie Zelinka from State Law Library says, all library staff are pitching in to get whatever needs to get done taken care of. We aren't necessarily doing our specific job roles all the time, but if someone needs to check out a book or file updates or scan something for a patron, we just do it, even if it's outside of our normal duties. Yeah, it's great to see everyone stepping up. Yan from Stevens Point says, another positive is that we get more positive feedback from our users, faculty and students, who really appreciate our efforts and services during these hard times. So yeah, it's really nice to hear that good feedback, that appreciation.
Hi, this is Wendy Brand from the Department of Transportation, and my experience doesn't really fall under any of these questions, but I just wanted to share with everybody that some people know 2.5 years ago, a decision was made very suddenly when we moved into the new building to get rid of our print collection, keep only things that have to do with Wisconsin, scan them, and have a digital only library. And we were given no additional resources with which to do this. And until just before the shutdown, we were finally making some progress on that, and we were hoping to get an LTE to help with scanning. So of course that didn't happen. So that's one big negative thing. We were finally making progress there, but most things are going in the Wisconsin Digital Archives if it's a document. Other things are going in a in-house database. I just want to let everybody know that my coworker John has a bunch of boxes of things that aren't scanned yet, but we have them kind of inventoried. So if there's some kind of a Wisconsin transportation related document that you think is something we would have had, we may still have it. We may be able to get at it. So just reach out to us, and you know, if it's in one of John's boxes, he's got a desktop scanner at home, he can scan it and send it to you. But we're, you know, gradually kind of recreating a very small set of our collection online. But anyways, yeah, so just if you think it's something we might have, reach out, and if we can get it to you, we will.
Well, thank you, Wendy, for updating us, and hang in there. I hope that things turn around for your library specifically and for all of us.